Won't you leave it at the door?
Hey Dad, do you think you could teach me how to shave these off?
Watch how I do that motion. Not like that. Like this. You put it just as low as you can. Okay.
All right, so welcome panelists to this awesome session. I am personally excited to be here and have this conversation with each of you. This is a great project, one of my favorite. And I'll start with my introduction just to let everybody know, everybody who's listening and watching. I'm Miri Rodriguez, and I'm a brand storyteller at Microsoft. I also consult with brands on storytelling, and I'm the author of Brand Storytelling. And with me is the team who actually created an incredible project that we're going to talk about. And for those of you who watched it and who haven't watched it, I'd also like for them to start and say hi and just give me a quick recap of this project, what this film is about.
Amy, do one of you two want to do this, or do you want me to take the recap of what the
You,
story?
you can do it. I'm
Okay,
good with it.
okay. I wish Kareem was here. Cool. Taking it from the top. Hey, I'm Malcolm. I'm the creative director at BRINK. Daniel Really Suits You is a piece of branded entertainment that we made for the Human Rights Campaign. It tells the story of Daniel Trujillo, who is a young trans boy in Arizona, and kind of just his coming of age story in a way that's, universally based in human truths and kind of really drives the audience to see his humanity. It's quiet and intimate and a slow burn, and uses a lot of non-actors, a lot of people from Daniel's actual life. It's really inspired by his actual, entering adulthood and taking the lessons and love that he's been given from his family and from his friends, and taking that with him into those early steps. Getting his driver's license is a really core part of the narrative, but it is a really character-driven piece.
Yeah, I absolutely love Daniel as a character. You actually answered one of my questions that I had for you, which was how many actors versus actual people were part of the film, because it feels so authentic and so real. So we'll get a little bit into that. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just so excited. I want to start with Amy. Maybe you can answer this question from the brand perspective. Why did you choose the storyline? Why was this important to the brand to showcase?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, one of the core things in the mission at HRC is changing hearts and minds in the fight for lived and legal equality, right? So, we in the in-house video team do a lot of work around storytelling in the entire LGBTQ plus community. But specifically, of course, we're in sort of a moment of crisis with the trans community as a whole in this country, and you could argue globally, I suppose. But we had a conversation or a couple conversations about a year before we went into production on this about how to kind of hone in and do more like lyrical narrative storytelling around these like moments of gender joy and gender euphoria that I think are not exactly unique to trans people. Like, I think they're pretty universal experiences, but they are moments that trans people tend to experience like very poignantly. So we had a bunch of public opinion research that we had sort of been doing a deep dive on. And then Wes and I had a bunch of different conversations and talked to folks that are in our in-house trans employee resource groups. And then sort of like fanned out and had a few other conversations with just like trans folks that we know in our lives about what moments like that might have been for them. And we just started sort of running through things like, trying on a suit for the first time, going to the beach and getting to take your shirt off for the first time,
Yeah, wow.
feeling like getting your ears pierced, having an affirming haircut, those kinds of things.
Yeah,
And we knew that we wanted to kind of like hone in on one of those and really distill the emotion and the sort of like validation that people experience in those moments,
yeah.
whether you're trans or cis, right? And so then when we started to kind of roll this project forward with BRINK, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but through the casting process, we had a number of conversations, and Daniel and his family sort of stood out to all of us as having had some moments like this in their own lives, and we're kind of moving through these experiences of like learning to shave, getting the driver's license. So yeah, we sort of just really zeroed in over a period of time. I don't know, Wes, if you have anything to add from our side of the house, but
Thanks. Just that, we know that cisgender people, people who are not trans, if you are not trans, you will never really understand what it's like to be trans. And one of our main goals is to try to bridge this empathy gap between trans folks and cisgender people. And so that's where we landed on that kind of common theme of gender joy and moments that everyone can relate to. And so once we got like that specific, then we were able to really kind of dive into what that looks like.
And that was very successful. I have to say, it touched on so many pieces of human condition, parenthood. I'm a mother. Watching your child. It was fascinating because I really was able to connect with every character personally, and that's very hard to do in a film. Sometimes you connect with one or two, but you successfully were able to in, bring the audience in to really live through each of the parents, and then the lady at the DMV, and then of course, obviously Daniel himself. So it was extremely, I believe it was so well done in terms of how you captured each storyline for every character, and then brought the essence of the empathy for each of the characters together, which is beautiful. Well done. I'd like to ask, what inspired the visual style and the aesthetics choices for this film? I know that Malcolm mentioned there was this intimate process, and it feels intimate. So what was that inspiration? How did that process go for you while you were creating the film?
That's a great question. A pretty strong through line in a lot of the work I really love, and a lot of the work I've done that I really love is I think real life is always more interesting than fiction. And my favorite thing to do is create almost a outer lens or bowl of a fiction filmmaking team, and then letting them get injected into a real world and trying to co-create and permeate those two things at once. The tension between them, I think, can lead
Love
to
that.
some of the most magical moments when it comes to filmmaking. And that was kind of the central core of this. We from an aesthetic perspective only, the
Yeah.
director we attached, the DP we attached, all of the core creative executional roles are really strong fiction filmmakers. And I was there, Wes and Amy, as well as very experienced documentarian filmmakers. We were all there to help guide. This is how you can co-create with an inherent strength in really compelling, strong visual aesthetics that aren't necessarily always associated with, documentary filmmaking. They
Yeah.
can be, but, I think this ultimately feels more like it's a fictional lens. That was the big goal. And then just, I'm a strong proponent that most good creativity comes from constraints. So it was mostly about creating rules around how many lights we could use, creating rules around how long takes had to be, how many setups we could shoot something in, stuff like that.
Wow, that's fascinating. I'd love to hear from Wes, from Amy, how you said you were on site. How did that feel from your perspective in those rules? Did everybody follow the rules? Was everybody aligned to this very creative process of matching, fiction with nonfiction and bringing it together?
yeah, I mean, I think like the first answer that comes to my mind when you said, how did you feel when you were on site? I'm like, it was hot. It was incredibly hot. It was like early June in Arizona, and it was like
Oh,
108 degrees,
wow.
I think the first shoot date. And like Malcolm and everybody else that were like Tucson natives were like, oh yeah, no, this is normal. I was like, no,
Yeah.
this is actually outrageous.
Man.
Shooting there is
Um,
insane. It's almost like a hostile environment at that point, how what you have
Why
to
truly.
did you
deal with
choose
to film.
that? Why did you choose Arizona?
Oh, well, that's where Daniel's based. And I
Yeah.
Oh,
mean,
okay,
the
got it.
entire
So you came to
script,
him,
yeah, everything's based around, his life.
his life. Okay, okay, good to know. Sorry, Amy, gone.
Oh no, it's all good. I mean, I think that it was like, look, Malcolm and everybody that got brought together crew-wise are like, I think those 3 days all felt very like not easy, but like organically we were all getting along, we were all working really well together. And it felt very like like clearly a well-oiled machine of folks who knew what they were doing. So I think that like in that the things like the lighting constraints or other kinds of like this sort of like rulemaking that Malcolm mentioned. To me, it didn't feel, even as like a doc person, to be
Yeah.
like an onerous thing, in terms of like the way that, we were structuring time and space on set. Um, I'm also, of course, like used to more minimalistic shoots. So to me, it's not like, oh man, there's a real lack of like wild panel lights in here. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm used to doing things that are a little bit more stripped down. So,
Yeah. I mean, and the technology has gotten so insane where you can really,
hmm
you can create such compelling images with pretty minimal equipment and you give someone an Amira and a sky panel and they can create the most beautiful images you've ever seen. I think the other thing,
Yeah.
building on what Amy said, coming from a background in entertainment and Hollywood and less so from the agency side, it
Yeah.
always kind of struck me as a no-brainer that like clients and the creatives you're bringing in as an agency, it's a writer's room environment. It's a room where
Hmm.
everyone's a creative who's at the table. Let's all cook this together like you would if you were developing a TV show or working on a feature. And I mean, Amy and Wes both were just like such incredible partners in that process of just being super game from day one to be in weekly meetings where the DP and the director and that we brought on a writer to help script it when with Daniel as well. Everyone was just very
That's
engaged
wonderful.
and open to the idea of let's approach this like it's a piece of IP. Let's have a writer's room where we're
Yeah.
pitching ideas and refining them, and that led to a lot of, I think, that level of alignment in
Yeah.
pre-production and in development led
Yes.
to an environment on set where we could let reality surprise us and wouldn't fall out of
Mm.
alignment. I've had experiences with clients before where you go, well, what's happening across the street is really interesting. Can we go shoot that? And it can sometimes
Yes.
throw people into a little bit of like, whoa, what about? But we
Yes.
had all been along the ride for so long that we were able to
Mm.
have that level of just like nimble playfulness because we were all really dialed in on the same points.
yeah, I think
I
that's
love
true.
that.
And I think that like, again, that goes back to my mind too, with like the sort of like doc mentality where it's like, oh, something is happening. We need to be flexible, I
Yes.
think there were a few moments that I can think of that were like that. And I think that we all just navigated everything gracefully. And also like, I will just say that I think the Trujillos, like truly again and again in my mind, I'm like, what unbelievable champions in terms of like putting
Mm.
up with all of us and sharing their time with us and being gracious and being accommodating and also just being very like easy and willing to say like, oh, okay, this is my semi-scripted prompt. I'm just gonna like noodle on this for 20 minutes while I'm driving around a neighborhood in a car, Like
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
Radiohead, I'll do that.
I love that.
Yeah, they were the
So
best.
oh, sorry, go on.
I just said they were the best. They were like amazing.
Well, it sounds like there was a synergy from the beginning, and that's very lucky, I would say. A lot of times, as you called out, Malcolm, we see that a lot where brands have a different idea or even change their mind on set after you've agreed on storylines and all kinds of things. And you have to, on the creative side, you have to, come in and just change it all and we're not prepared, whatever. So it sounds like you guys had synergy from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. As someone who works in this field, I always get bummed when it comes down to the thing of like the client didn't get it, they derailed the idea. To me, it's like I'm being hired to make the client get the idea and to bring them in. Like
Mm.
anytime if a client's getting scared on set, it's because you didn't bring them along. Like people want to make good art. Everyone wants to make
Yeah,
good stuff. No one's showing up to set saying, "I can't wait to make mediocre content." Like
that's right.
people want to make good things. If they're feeling scared or white knuckling, it's because you
Yeah.
failed to make them feel like a collaborator. They should
To
feel like
trust you.
a co-writer. If you get that sense of trust and collaboration, you know, we were shooting at 115-degree heat. There were multiple beats where like wireless video transmission couldn't function. There were just no Teradecks,
Mm.
no monitors. And I'd turn to Amy and I'd be like, look, I can't, we have to go get this shot. I can't have Video Village up for it. And we had established that again, that just that level of trust where you're able to be like, yeah, I know that you can go do this. And the goal for me always
Yeah.
is, as a creative director, what can I do where the client, me, the director, the DP, the editor, that alignment and trust is just up and down for everyone, because it's how you're going to be able to, everyone's going to be able to make their own deeper and more meaningful creative decisions from the strongest perspective possible and not be afraid, right? They're not going to self-edit.
I love that. Wes, were there any memorable moments for you during the shooting, the production, even the pre-production? Were there moments for you from a brand perspective going, wow, this is going exactly how we envisioned, or it's going different, but I love it. Like, was there anything like that, or just plain memorable moments you want to share
Yeah.
behind the scenes?
I wasn't able to be on set,
Okay.
unfortunately, but it was for a good reason. I was getting married that weekend. Uh,
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. But you know what Malcolm's talking about, and so is Amy, about the trust, I think is kind of the biggest thing. I have kind of my connective tissue in all of this is that I have worked with Malcolm and Brink previously on a project a few years ago around trans kids playing sports. And
Hmm.
we made an incredible piece and we had a phenomenal time. And so when we knew we wanted to do something not only that like looked really good, but like was really like emotion led, it was a
Yes.
no-brainer that we wanted to work with Brink again and reach out to them. And, you know, I think that Amy and I approached this from, I don't know, just trusting that like they're gonna do it, you know,
Yeah.
and not being like, all right, send us three ideas and we'll do a thumbs up, thumbs down. I mean, it was really great to be a part of the process, you know, because this topic is so nuanced and
Yes,
one word in the script can shift everything. And so while
it
we
can.
were kind of experts on the subject, we deferred to them on how to get it done. So while everyone knew their roles, you know, there's also trust and flexibility in that if someone has an idea, it's really welcomed. Um,
I love that.
it's
Thank
something
you for
that we want, you
sharing.
know, we just want to keep doing.
It sounds wonderful. I think it's a great, it's a magic. You bring that's magic that shows up at the moment. Speaking of magic, let's talk about casting. So, Amy, you got a little bit ahead of yourself. Let's get there now. I'd love to hear from your perspective how that process, you know, when you decided on the storyline, you decided this is what it's going to be about. This is the emotion we want to drive, and this is how we want to grab our audience. The next part is obviously casting and it has to be perfect. It has to align with the story. So how was that process, Amy, from a brand perspective, when you met the team, when you said this is them? How did you know that Daniel was going to be Daniel?
So I will keep this very brief and then punt to Wes and Malcolm because I feel like both of them were very much more embedded in the meat of the casting process than I was.
Okay.
I think you know, HRC has a variety of relationships with folks across the country that are trans youth and parents. And so we sort of quickly did some outreach to a variety of different people and pulled some folks in and had a bunch of different conversations early on. But when the kind of like honing in that I was mentioning before happened, I think that Malcolm and Wes were closer to that process than I was. Although I will say, in general, I think the elements of the Trujillo story that are like facts that are brought out in various ways in the film are, it's great that we had those beats to come to because those are their real life experiences. But yeah, Wes and Malcolm definitely feel free to elaborate.
You know, one thing that's hard about what we do is that in order to cast, you know, real people and real trans people, you've got to be public about who you are. And for a lot of people,
Yeah.
especially in this environment, like that's not safe, right? To be like, hey, me,
Mhm.
I'm the trans person. And so that already kind of puts your casting net, you know, really, really small. And really, we just floated, we floated people for Malcolm and Karima and Ace, our writer, to talk to. And from, you know, extensive interviews that they had and multiple talks with folks, they kind of made the decision to say, like, look, this is who we think is the best, and this is why. And we're like, great.
Yeah, I mean, the casting process for this was unique to the projects we do that are like this project. And I would think
Mhm.
about it almost more from the perspective of hiring a director or a DP or a writer. When we started off with the project, we knew one thing. We wanted to create something that built genuine empathy, and, you know, built bridges. And we wanted it to be primarily driven by non-actors. We hadn't written a script because we knew that to write a script before you cast it is going to not work. So the first thing we did before we even had Daniel, we went and you know, I'm a cisgendered heterosexual dude. We went and found people who were not that. I mean, that was like the big first thing was the people who are telling the story and are going to be living and breathing it for a while. need to have a connection to it that's human and deep if we're
Genuine.
trying to tell a story that's fundamentally about trying to tell a story and also trying to connect with people, right? You're trying to
Yeah.
connect with a bunch of non-actors. And that was where through that talent search is where we found Ace Clamber and Karima Issa, who were both incredible on this. And then once we had them in place, we went and did these preliminary depth interviews with a bunch of different families that were about an hour long. And that's a two-factor thing, right? You're one, gauging screen presence, character, but also you're gauging, is this someone who's going to go the distance in writing the script and on set? Because it's a very unique, specific thing of, cool, you're cast in this. Also, we're going to now go write a script based on 4 hours of conversations with you and read it with you and refine it and revise it. And we want you to be excited about yes-anding ideas and building it and telling us, oh, actually, there's this park down the street. Like that you're bringing on so much more than just an actor.
Sure.
And it's an intense proposition, you know.
It is. It is. And but I mean, it really the film itself feels so real. I mean, it feels like a documentary. It really does. It feels like it's just these people are living this, and I'll say there's two moments that for me were highlights. One is when Daniel finally, and it was poetic for me. I don't know if you intended it that way. I'd love to hear your perspective, but from a viewer perspective, when he finally parallel parks, right? And it's that moment of excellence, of like, I got it, triumph, and it's just you're rooting for that, for the character. And then of course at the DMV when he goes to get his license, and the woman is looking for the name, and so you see as a mother, and I'm like I said, I'm a mother. She comes, and you feel so strongly the mother coming in to want to protect Daniel, and then he is just so graceful to be like, Mom, I got this, right? I can handle this. So you see the moment on both sides of maturity, of winning a life, a life moments in the maturity, because he is coming of age, but it's something that we all relate to as children or as parents. And so I love that, and I love how that shows up in the casting because it's so real. Um, what would you say the feeling of those moments? What were you trying to convey? So I get empathy from the film to the audience, and from the audience to the film characters, but overall, when you have those moments of triumph, it doesn't feel, by the way, that it's not a hero's journey idea, which I love because I think people are tired of that. He is not struggling; he's just navigating life, which is we're all navigating life. And so, but he has winning moments. What were those feelings that you were trying to capture for the audience?
Quickly, you pointed out two scenes that I just want to do a quick anecdote about, and then I'd love to
Please.
hear Amy answer that question. But it's just funny that those are the two scenes you mentioned, because really early on, I'm a big fan of mantras, big fan of something you can put on like the top of a door, especially for creative stuff like this, just like, here's the North Star. And on this
Yeah.
one, something that was huge for me with Karima and Simeon, the DP, who did an amazing job, was the approach we're doing isn't documentary and it isn't fiction. When we run into things that go horribly wrong on set, do not try and fix them like we're on a fiction film set, and don't try and fix them like we're on a documentary film set. We're trying
Oh,
to
wow.
blend them, and we need to think of solutions that blend them. And the first day we're on set, it's 115 degrees, the pterodactyls are crashing. I'm slathering just sunscreen head to toe continuously. Daniel comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, I forgot to mention, I don't know how to parallel park. I don't know that yet." And we had maybe 3 hours to film like that entire montage and the scene. And he's a team. I'm not gonna freak out in front of him. I was like, "Okay, got it, buddy. Let me go talk with everyone." And I think like Amy, Karima, and Samina sat and was like, "Dude, I don't know." We had what we had shot listed and scripted is not what's in there at all. Like, we had a whole different thing built. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And I don't remember how it came about, but there's that locked off wide that just like cuts a ton. And someone was just
Yes.
like, get his dad and have his dad teach him to parallel park right now, and we'll just roll on it. And if we need to change up coverage, we will, but just like, let's just capture. That's what we're here to capture anyway. Just have
Yes.
him teach him. And that's how we ended up getting that moment in the script. And then the other thing I love about the one you pointed out with Lizette is that was I want to say the last thing we shot, close to it for sure.
Okay.
And
Okay.
on set was her last scene of acting. And on set, she stopped everyone and was like, this isn't how I'd play this. Like, what's written isn't what I'd
Mm.
say. This is what I do. And that's the thing I'm talking about of like, if you can get to that
Yes.
level of trust from the client all the way down to like a non-actor being willing to stop an entire film production of like 18 people and be like, I don't know, this is not, I would jump way harder. Like, we need to rewrite this
Yeah.
line like they're
Yes.
Vin Diesel on the Fast and Furious. Like, that's, you know, I've acted in stuff. It's scary to stop a whole film set and be like, this isn't honest to me. It's just fun to me that both of those moments are that same thing of like fixing things that are slightly out of alignment, not via
Yes.
either of the two nodes of film
That's
production.
right.
I would love to hear Amy answer the question you actually asked, but I thought you would just enjoy those anecdotes.
I love that. Thanks for sharing. How amazing.
Yeah, okay, ask it again because now I'm also thinking on set.
Yes,
I'm like,
yeah, that was actually, it felt like you answered it in a way. So I was asking really in those two moments, what were the feelings you were trying to capture for each of those moments? To me, they felt so
oh
real.
yeah.
So what were you aiming at with these scenes?
Well, it's interesting to hear Malcolm talk through some of it from his perspective because I also feel like in those two moments, right, like my mind immediately goes to like with the parking scene, like yes, immediately the thought is like, oh, that's right, of course, Daniel had never parallel parked before, but I also remember his like amazing level of confidence in that moment, which
Wow.
then quickly was shattered in this like in this like very genuine way. Like when he said to Malcolm, like, I don't actually know how to parallel park, he was like, but I'm gonna crush this. Like it's gonna be awesome. Like I'm gonna do it. And then he just quickly did not do it. And like and so I feel like there was also this extra added vibe of like when we had the like we were like, okay, this is the like victory shot.
Yes.
I think he also knew at that point that like it was in fact a struggle. And so like it was like the full like arc of that moment did actually like land in this very genuine way. And then I think the same thing happened in the second moment that you mentioned, but in a slightly different capacity. I'll say just from the perspective of like I remember, and I'm sure Malcolm and Wes, y'all do too, that like that is in fact part of their actual story, like something similar to what wound up playing out at the DMV did happen in their
Mm,
lives. I think it was actually in like a pharmacy setting, and Daniel was much younger, but
okay.
they were having difficulty, I think, getting like cold medicine for him or something like that, because there were two names in the system when he was much,
Interesting.
much younger. And the folks at the pharmacy counter were, I think they were a little bit like not exactly embarrassed, but not quite sure how to navigate. And they sort of kept saying, like, oh, why don't y'all just go do another lap of shopping in the store and we're going to try to figure this out. And eventually, Lizette did manage to hone in on the fact that that was what was going on and they were able to
Mm,
like resolve the situation. But so it was also, I would imagine, from Lizette's perspective in that moment, like, it's this like genuine re-experience or experience of like what they had walked through at a certain point in their own lives. So I think having that ability to like kind of bring the genuine emotion out in what they were like
yes.
reliving on set, like
Yeah.
absolutely was like the key, you know?
And it showed up like that so strongly. I mean, those two moments captured me so much. Wes.
And you know, one thing just to add on to that is that as much as I want to say like we can predict what everyone is going to take away, one thing that's been really fun about this is hearing what resonates with everyone who watches it. And so like what resonates with you is different from other
Yes.
people, right? We've
Sure.
heard from someone that, you know, the scene of Daniel learning to parallel park made them remember when their mom taught them how to parallel park. We've had a coworker who said that that ending scene with the DMV employee is actually a wonderful way of showing how to affirm someone who is trans without, you know, making it weird. You know,
Sure.
the DMV employee just looks and says, there's two names here. Which one is it? And he's like, Daniel. Great.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
and
it.
so
And
that is
Daniel
something
suits you.
that we did not purposely write, you know, and this is how to properly affirm someone who is trans, but it's been really great to see these moments that other people are taking from it and then wanting to
Love that. What else have you heard from viewers? What besides how they're taking moments like that? What learning lessons have they said? What have people shared when they've seen the film?
I mean, people I think I've also heard folks really resonate with Jose. Like, I think it's convenient that we have like all of these elements of like a nuclear family, right? And all of them
Yes,
like equally endearing and like so sweet and
they
genuine.
really are.
Like every time Daniel smiles in the film, I'm like, oh, like how can you not
So
adore his
cute.
like little sweet face? But yeah, we've definitely had people talk about Jose. I know, I mean, Wes and I just talked about this yesterday, but my partner actually was saying that she noticed in the shaving scene that like it reminded her of her own like cisgender brother when he was learning how to shave, and so she was saying that like, you know, it was making her have feelings about missing him and things like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, I love that. Thank you for sharing, Amy. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the brand side of this. Thank you for sharing so much about the I love the anecdotes and the scenes, the behind the scenes and the key learning moments. This is so wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I want to turn this over to now the actually on the brand side. How do you see this film fitting into the broader marketing strategy of the Human Rights Campaign? How is this something that you're thinking for the long term? How will this, what's the shelf life of something like this, and how does it coming into a new administration and all the things that are happening, what is the do you envision this landing more and more into your long-term brand strategy?
Yeah, well, the new administration is definitely forcing some rethinks of a lot of things. I will say that I think, you know, what I mentioned earlier as far as the sort of like North Star work of changing hearts and minds is definitely something that I think this is sort of I would say that it's pretty evergreen, right? Like, I think that it's an effort in that direction. And I think one thing that Wes and I talk about a lot is trying to show up more in unconventional spaces. So my hope is that we can find ways that are a little bit unconventional to do some distribution planning. Wes, I don't know. I know I always love hearing Wes talk about this kind of stuff. So I feel like he's
my
definitely
my
got
political spiel, which
yeah,
is
do it. Do
which
it.
is as follows: is that look, like transgender adults make up 0.5% of the population. That's half of 1%. And at least $250 million was spent this election cycle on anti-trans ads. We have a major problem with how society views transgender people. And one of our goals, especially in this next year, is to really bridge that gap of misunderstanding and to show that we are actually more alike than the other side wants us to think. And that is why we kind of hit this sweet spot of gender euphoric moments that everyone can share and relate to. And so for me personally, I mean, I think that Daniel really suits you is just the first one, right? There are many other iterations of this that we want to do, and then also make different versions that live in different spaces, right? I mean, that $250 million was on TV ads, right? We need 30-second cuts and 60-second cuts. And then we need 7-minute cuts, like our full film, for people who are like, I'm ready to like really watch something and digest.
Malcolm.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I would add there, the left and progressivism has a propaganda problem. The right are killing it right now on functionally changing people's behaviors and beliefs, and there's a couple reasons for that. I don't know how far we want to stray from the topic at hand into Malcolm's on a podcast territory, but
Until
I
they
think
cut us off.
I think a big one is that we feel we are frequently on the defensive because conservatives have spent a very long time and a lot of money really, really dialing in how to make propaganda based on fear and how to make propaganda based on creating animosity between class and other identity points too. I think the class one's a big one. It puts us on the defensive because it often forces the left or the Democrats or progressivism to have our negotiating point be, can you just see our humanity? Can you just at least admit we're people, we should have rights? And it in the face of propaganda that's designed to foment separation out of fear and anxiety and aggression, the only viable and legitimate antidote is counter propaganda that creates empathy. And that was pausing the artistry of this project and shifting to the propagandistic focus of what beliefs and behaviors you're attempting to change.
Yeah.
Another Malcolm North Star motto rally cry was like, I want a dad who's watching the Cornhuskers on TV in Iowa in his easy chair, who's had 7 beers, 7 like Coors, the Blue Mountain beers, to tear up at this. I want him to cry. I want him to cry at the 30. I want that guy to like not like, that's the reaction I want. And that motivated so many and it was so exciting to have something that distilled on the strategy perspective. Because I remember my editor, I was giving him notes and he was like, oh no, dude, the guy won't cry. Like, we can't do that. Like, that's wrong for this. That guy's not going to cry if we do it that way. Like, everyone really got that guy and got why we needed to do that. And you can change people's behaviors and beliefs by making them feel scared, or you can change their behaviors and beliefs by making them see another person like themselves. Regardless of what it is you're selling or what idea you're trying to change, if you focus your communication on the second one, you're making a better world. Even if you're a conservative propagandist, I'd say, like, please start. Please, I get that you have political beliefs, you have too. Can we start focusing the changing of people's beliefs on the idea of seeing each other and not making us scared of each other? It's really damaging on a deep culturally fabric level. And to me, that's one thing that this project is just an absolute slam dunk on, is it leans completely away from the thing of tragically painting this picture of like Daniel's rights are never at risk. Daniel's right, his identity is never like quashed by a bigot. Like, it's much more about this idea of just like, you taught your son to shave. Your dad taught you to parallel park. That's this kid too. Can you just see that? And that is what will rocket behaviors and beliefs to a major level. And then, I mean, to Wes's point, I think this should just be the first one. And also, you know, paid media placements are incredible. Why I work at an agency that is focused on branded entertainment is because I think that behaviors and beliefs are changed much more quickly by content that you are seeking out yourself and or paying for, and not content that I'm paying to put in front of you, because you know you're being sold to at that point. And so trying to find opportunities like this 7-minute film, trying to find opportunities like, you know, trying to do to turn this into like a TV show, things to me like that are where my head always goes for long term opportunities.
Amazing. Well, I would say that you all were very successful at those goals of and I love how you painted this picture, Malcolm, of, you know, showcasing the humanity of someone. It's not just about the rights and fighting for the rights. It's just, hey, they're just like us. They're people. We are all people. We're all navigating life and life moments. And that showed very clearly through from every, like I said at the beginning, from every angle, from every character. And you can really put yourself in the shoes of the dad in the moment of playing guitar, which is very intimate. You know, the shaving moment, just all of it. It was a feel good, realistic film, and it hits home from many angles, and it's well put and it educates in the best manner, I believe, with love and not out of fear. So you have absolutely have captured the story in a great way, and I was so excited to watch it and very honored to have this conversation. Anything that I didn't ask about, or anything extra you want to share from anecdotes, behind the scene moments, anything that I left out that you like people to know about this film?
I mean, if someone's gotten this far and is watching it, I'd love to hear Wes and Amy talk about like working with kids on camera and directing them. I feel like you've both shared a lot of really cool insights with me in the time we've worked together. And if someone is this invested at this point, we're 40 minutes into the talk and they watched the movie, I bet they'd be interested in hearing some advice on directing non-actor children.
That'd be great.
I will just say quickly to Malcolm's earlier point about the propaganda problem. One thing that I do want to mention is that before we get into the kid stuff, is that we did do message testing on this and found that it did produce a significant lift in public opinion for the folks who saw it. So I do just want to plug that as like feeling overall like we really did hit the target. As far as working with kids on camera, I feel like I want to punt to Wes, although I, you know, have certainly done it myself, but just thinking about the Let Us Play piece and what a bigger scale fray that is than most of my experiences, which are closer to working one-on-one or at least two-on-one, you know.
I mean, I don't know, you just gotta be flexible. You know, a lot of my work is actually spending like 3 or 4 days with a family and then making like a 4 minute kind of little doc piece about them. And it's just I mean, whatever they do is what you capture, and that resonates a lot better than trying to make someone do something like that's fake. And it's just being, I think you learn to look for like really authentic moments that you want to make sure you capture to get across. It's just you just have a light bulb that like when something is happening, when something is good and you're getting it. But in terms of like telling kids what to do, I don't know. I mean, we had like 10, 10, 10 to 12-year-olds on a soccer field like all day, and all they wanted to do was just like scrimmage and play, and we had to make them do drills, and they were like unhappy about it. But you just give them what they want in the end. And
I hope you fed them well. They eat a
yeah,
lot.
yeah. They told all their parents to take them out for ice cream at the end, and like all
That's
of it.
right.
Yeah.
I love it. Wonderful. Malcolm, anything from you? Any last words? Any more stories? You have great stories.
Wes got me thinking about that the sports beat. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would say Wes is underselling himself on the how good he is with kids. That one specifically was the first thing we ever collaborated on, is the let us play spot he's talking about. And just I've always I'm the youngest kid in my family, don't have a lot of extended family. Kids for me are always kind of like, as a director, just as a person, let alone a director, they're challenging and kind of intimidating. And I remember like taking phone notes watching Wes work with them, because he was just so in it was just able, like, so clearly had this deep experience of just being able to me, the secret that I kind of learned from him was you need to create a shared vulnerability where the kid is willing to say, this doesn't feel honest. Right? Like, that's the thing, is you have to get to the point where the kid's messing up, not locked in on takes, and is willing to tell an adult they don't know, something about this doesn't feel true to like me. Can we figure out what that is? And you're almost, I feel like so much of being a director, but definitely with kids, is almost like giving them the vocabulary they don't have. It's like giving them like the language they need to tell it's their story. Let them tell it. You're there to be like, what about this paintbrush? What about this marker? Like, and I for real was very impressed by just how present you were with kids and able to get that from them. Other things I would want to add to this.
Who named the film?
Who named the film? I don't know. I don't remember.
I feel like it must have been Karima or Ace.
Must have been.
Yeah,
Must have been.
Karima or Ace.
Yeah,
Kind of.
Karima or Ace must have named it. They really took the lead on. Yeah, I mean, the development process of this, once we had cast Daniel, was they went and did 2-hour interview with him, writer's room drafting. So a week of just beats, just pitching beats, pitching ideas. They'd go write a script. Myself and my associate creative director Reed would sit with that. We'd show it to the wider team, Wes, Amy, everyone, kind of soak up notes and then sit for 4 hours and just throw darts at a dartboard and just kind of talk it through. And then we did that for about 3 iterations. We'd meet with Daniel again, and we just kind of refined and tuned and shifted. Oh, I know one more thing I wanted to add to this off of what Wes said, of getting to spend 4 days with a family, which is just like, that's the secret sauce to anything like this. It's definitely I mean, the secret sauce to good documentary filmmaking is I don't need money, I need time. And hopefully time doesn't cost money, although it almost always does. But that applies to something like this too, where you're trying to go tell a fiction story with non-actors that's about their life. The time to be with them and understand their life and their world, but also the time to just establish that rapport where they can say to you, this doesn't feel honest. This doesn't feel like, it's about that intimacy where they can have that level of trust. Again, it's just like so critical across the board. I think that's it for me.
I love it. Well, thank you again. This is a fascinating conversation about a fascinating film that I am so glad that it it is being showcased, and it got awarded here in the Sundance Film Festival under Brand Storytelling. I think you guys are doing an incredible job overall. I'm excited to see more of it.